Hello, everybody. Welcome back to How Come. I love this episode so much, and I'm so excited that this is the first one you're going to hear in a long time of us not releasing anything because, oh my, so much was going on. Robin got really sick. She's better now. And yeah, we're raring to go. There's 2 episodes on Patreon that you can check out if you need even more content, patreon.com/howcome. But today's guest is Ben Katzner. He's a stand-up comedian and author whose debut graphic novel, Hello, My Name is Poop, is available now. He's a friend of mine, and we are talking about adoption. There's a lot of opinions in this episode. Obviously, they're our own, and we are dying to hear yours if they differ from ours. This is just like a jumping off point to start talking about maybe a little more parenting stuff. Because a lot of us are parents now. A lot of friends of mine are parents, and just other stuff going on in the world has us talking about adoption and foster care and education and things having to do with kids. So I've been curious about adoption for a while, and I think you guys are really going to like this episode. Naturally, there's not a ton of sex in this episode, if that's what you're looking for. Again, go to patreon.com/howcome. We've got episodes with Dr. Helen Fisher. She's back with Dr. Justin Garcia talking about the match study about singles in America that just came out. And it's super interesting. And then we're talking to Vanessa Marin and her husband Xander about relationships and their new book. So head to Patreon for more sexy sex. But this episode is going to be mostly about adoption. There is some sex. There is. But it's really good, funny, and I think you'll learn something. And if you have something that you can teach us, again, DM me. We are always so excited to hear from you and learn from you because you guys are geniuses. And you have already changed my opinion on so many things. So get excited. Here we go.
How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna jizz.
Welcome, Ben Katzner.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for accommodating my probably kind of annoying time frame, but technically I'm supposed to be working, so.
0% annoying to me. Robin, are you annoyed?
No, it was perfect. You were great.
We're
Thank you so
great.
much.
Yeah, I got to watch so much
That's what I
TV today being like, well, I'm going to do work at 4.
Right, yeah. That's what I want to be for people. I want to be your little treat at the end of the day, that's.
Yeah.
You are a little treat. On that note, I was talking to you, and I've been talking to a lot of people about different things in this post-Roe v. Wade world. What do we do with babies? Is foster care cool? Is adoption cool? Like I've been saying for a really long time, I don't need to freeze my eggs. Like I could always adopt. And there are always people who are saying, well, there's problems with that and there's problems with this or whatever. And I've never been adopted. You have. So
that is my favorite. I'm not kidding, of all time. That's my favorite introduction into like my backstory ever. Like I've never done it personally, but
I've never done it. I've never adopted anyone, but yeah, you have a lived experience.
That is true. Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, I am an adoptee. I was born in Atlanta to a single mother who actually already had a child. She was in college and she was like, I don't think I can have another one of these. She didn't, maybe she was still in college. So planning wasn't like her biggest thing yet. But, she was like, we have the second kid. I can't take 2 kids. So she put me up for adoption. And then I was adopted by a white family in Minnesota, which is almost the exact opposite of Atlanta.
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know geography. And I was raised there pretty much the rest of my entire life. I was adopted pretty young.
How young?
I was like less than a year, probably like 6 months most. So like to me, the adoption aspect of it wasn't like, there's not a ton I remember of like being in an orphanage or anything like that. But technically I was like, I guess in an orphanage for a little bit foster care. So that's like a quick backstory. Just me personally, and I am pro adoption. I think it'd be kind of wild if I wasn't, but
well, but there are like a lot of adoptees on TikTok, and like we've talked about, like them popping up on my For You page and yours as well, like that are like, this is like the worst thing ever.
Right. So I think a big thing that people talk about too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like transracial adoption is like a pretty huge issue for people.
Yeah.
And I do think kind of like how people are like, hey, I might not be anti-gun, but you should regulate guns a little more. I think like I'm not anti-adoption, but you should probably regulate some of this adoption stuff more. Like people really need to do, if you're a white family adopting a young child of color, like you got to do the work. You got to do the legwork to understand what you're doing, how that's going to shape them, how, you know, I think a lot of times I'm a millennial. So like, I'm kind of the age group, I think, where parents were kind of like, well, you know, if we're not actively racist, we're not bad. We'll just not, we just won't talk about it. Let's just not talk about it. So then, like, you know, you get a lot of kids who are like, wait, you don't all do this? And everyone's like, you're the weirdest person I've ever met in my entire life. So I do think understanding the culture you're bringing a child into and the culture you're taking them from are two important things for parents
understand where they came from.
Absolutely.
And make it a priority.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen about it is that parents aren't learning about their children's cultures or making it accessible for them to learn about them. And then the other side of people going to different countries so that they won't be able to reunite with their birth parents.
Yeah. Was it Angelina Jolie? One of the, it's either her or Charlize Theron have like a bunch of.
Angelina has so many children.
Yeah. And it's like, she's like, I'm helping. And it's like, who do you feel like you're helping? You know what I mean? Sometimes with like famous people, it's really tough. One of the worst things I think I've ever seen on TikTok was like Madonna making her son dance. Have you ever seen this? It's like a video and it's like an interpretive dance, I think, of something. And it was like around the time of George Floyd. And she like made mention of that. And he's like a young black kid. Yeah. And, you know, she's basically just being like, go, let them know that I have a black one too. And I'm just like, I don't love this.
No, I hate
Madonna, you let me down, you know?
Yeah. I've heard too, like, because I was talking about this episode with somebody and I was saying that there's like negative responses to adoption, and they were like, all of my friends that I know like are so happy with their families and stuff and are so like grateful or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that can be true at the same time as like, what if their parents didn't want to give them up and like that was the only option? I've heard, and I think we should get like a professional person who talks about this too, but that like it costs a lot of money to adopt a child, but at the same time, people who have their children and want to keep them aren't getting any money, like where they would keep them if they could.
Yeah, that is, and that's a fucked up loophole in the process, right? Where it's like, you know, they take a child away from their mother, and because they feel like the home setting is unfit, and it's like, okay, well, you could also provide some assistance to make sure that this is a fit place. It feels pretty easy, right? Instead of being like, okay, well, we'll take this kid away, put them completely in a completely different situation. Good luck to them. And then hope you figure your stuff out in time to like get your kid back. That's so convoluted. I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole system is convoluted. I think I haven't navigated it a ton, like, but just the little things I have done or people I've talked to of like, there was a time where I was, you know, like, oh, maybe I want to go figure out who my birth parents are and like maybe go down that road. And then finding out that I would have to pay, I believe it was $200 per parent. I have to pay that.
What?
I was like, why am I paying? And like, I don't know if that was, part of me is also like, I don't know, this could be a scam. I just reached out to this random email that was, you know, a name on a like birth certificate or something that I got. So it's kind of weird. And the money aspect is wild too, because people are paying a lot for kids. I feel like I was, I was like I'm not going to say I was a bargain, but just for the time, like I have a joke about this, but I was $15,000. Okay, that's how much I
Okay.
cost. I've literally done comedy shows where I've been in rooms where the equipment was worth more than what my parents paid for me.
Oh my
Like,
God.
that truly is blown my mind.
But just because you get a bargain on something does not mean it's like not the fanciest thing you own.
yeah, no, I think my parents got a sweet deal. You know,
They got an amazing deal on you. Yeah.
They bought in low and they're going to get a good
Yield.
reinvestment. Maybe not both of them, but one of them. But also, I was adopted by poor white people, which is insane. Like, the thing I say is if you have to take the bus to an orphanage, you can't have a kid. That's nuts. You know what I mean? So that's like a different struggle, right? So then there's like, okay, so I'm a fish out of water, sure, but also the water I am now swimming in is poor people water, which is very dangerous. There's a lot of like cars that don't work in it and jet skis for no reason, you know? Like, there's a lot of stuff so I'm navigating this new world and all this stuff, and like they're struggling. And I'm the only adoptee in my family. Like, I have an older sister. They thought they wouldn't be able to have kids, so they adopted me. And then oops,
they thought they wouldn't be able to do it again.
Yeah, and then they had two more kids. Like, I have a younger brother and a younger sister.
You're one of 4?
I'm one of 4. Yeah,
me too.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Okay. Are any of your siblings adopted?
No, but Robin and I were saying that we both got called adopted by one of our siblings.
Sure.
Which
that's a common thing.
So rude that's even like, I used to be like, good, your genes are horrible.
You're right. That's how you got to approach that. When you're like, oh, you're the redheaded stepchild, or you're the adopted one. You're like, okay, good, because that means I'm free of the genetics, shackles that you're all in right now.
They picked you. They didn't pick your siblings.
That's literally what I would say. I'd be like, they chose me. You were all accidents. And then we would fight. But
that must be weird. Strange being the only one.
I think for me, I just was. Like, I was adopted so young, so I didn't really know. It's not really until other people get like, involved in stuff, that stuff starts to get weird for you. Like, physically, like, yes, I know I am different. And like, they were never like, it's hard to, when your entire family's white and you're not, it's hard for them to like hide that something's different. So they were never like, oh no, you were just left in the oven a little too long, nothing crazy.
Have you ever seen Easy A?
I have, but I don't remember whatever you're about to reference.
Oh, okay. They're a white family and the son is adopted and he's black. And the kid is talking about the fact that he's like not growing enough, and Stanley Tucci's the dad. And he's like, well, don't worry. Like, everyone in our family takes a long time to grow. And the kid's like, why does that matter? I'm adopted. And Stanley Tucci's like, who told you?
Yes, that is a good joke. That is a great joke.
It's so cute.
That would be if my family was very funny. They're not actually funny, but like, they try to be funny, which I loved, and is where I think I got a lot of my humor stuff from.
Yeah.
But like, if they would have made those jokes, I don't think there's anyone in the world who would have ever made me uncomfortable about my adoption. Like, that's the kind of joke that I would like make now to someone. So God, that is I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot about that. That's so funny.
I love that scene so much. So you were mentioning though and we were talking about how a lot of people won't really learn about their kids' culture, and you're a millennial. So did they go with that flow of like kind of just not saying anything?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
They were also from the Midwest. So it's like talking about your feelings, talking about anything, like you were talking about our family or whatever. Like my dad used to like document like his family lineage and stuff, and was very into that. But that was never like passed down to me. I was never like, oh, I wonder where I go back to or anything. So there wasn't really that sort of urgency to be like, hey, we want you to feel comfortable. Like they were like, we love you. So we care about you. We brought you in and we're your family. And if someday you want to talk, find your birth mother, that's cool. You can do that. They were never like anti me finding my birth mother, but they were never like, there are just a lot of conversations that like you probably need to have as a young black man in America that like we just we just never had those discussions. Like,
Right.
I never got the Roy Wood Jr. is a comedian that has a really good joke about keeping receipt on him when he's in like a Best Buy or something. And like, I never got that talk. I never got the how you deal with police officers talk. And like, my parents, my dad especially, like, didn't love cops, but that came from a poor person angle, not from like a racial angle.
Right.
He was like, yo, these cops are always on my ass about drinking and driving. Not like, oh no, they're also bad to, minorities.
To people that are walking and
right,
not doing anything.
So yeah, they just never talked about it.
Are they open to talking about it now that you're an adult?
Yeah, I think my mom would be. So my dad, so this is also kind of a weird thing. My dad and I, my adoptive father and I, don't have a relationship anymore. So he spent all that money, doesn't even want to hang out. Crazy. But so my mom and I can talk about pretty much anything. I think we talk about the world. So like now she kind of understands things a little bit more. So like if there's some sort of protest, if there's something, God forbid, something horrific happens to somebody Black in the news, which is a lot. So, we have conversations about that, and like, I can give my perspective and my understanding of stuff. And that's kind of like me reverse educating her on stuff that maybe she didn't
it's
really
not like
before.
Necessarily you having the space to be supported, because she still has like a long way to go, but at least she's like receptive.
Yeah, it's just very interesting because she's not like, my mom like worked with HIV patients when, in like the early 90s and 80s and stuff. And she works in a nursing home right now. Like, she's a very loving and caring person. So she like, that's where she usually comes from. Maybe sometimes there's stuff she doesn't get, but she's never like, what's the deal with these people? She's always just like, how come? It's like an old lady being like, so what is this thing? And we just talk about it.
Are they not together anymore, or he's just?
Yeah, they are not together. Okay. They are legally, like, if the government is watching this, I think they are still together.
Us too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fascinating. I don't know. They just never got a divorce.
We have the same last name.
That was like our initial bond. There was two things. Our last names
I was like,
very
we're
close.
twins.
Yeah. People kept getting us confused. They kept wanting to try to touch your hair. It was nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they are, they're emotionally separated, I think is the best way to say it, which is annoying to all of the kids. And he just fucked up a bunch and then never really apologized for it. So I was like, I'm kind of good on talking to you, and my younger brother and younger sister don't talk to him. But yeah.
Well, this is a thing that's been a talking point too, is like a lot of people have been like, women are going to end up childless and stuff. And like, it's so bad. And like the argument is, if you don't have children, you're going to end up lonely. And you don't have children so you don't end up lonely. That is so rude and so much pressure to put on the kids. But also, look around. There are a lot of people that had kids and their kids do not take care of them in old age. They don't talk to them. Like, having a child or adopting a child doesn't give you like license to get taken care of by them for the rest of your life, or even like spoken to.
If you're having a kid to make a friend, I feel that's like a bummer. That's I know it's hard. I know it's hard in these streets, especially if you're in New York. I know it's tough to make friends, but there's got to be a better way. Just tweet out, "Hey, I'm lonely and I need a friend." You don't need to have a child for that. That's too much.
Go hang out with Marissa Mize, who did No More Lonely Friends. She didn't like her friends on TikTok. She asked TikTok, "I need some friends." Now she's got like 1,000 friends.
Yeah. Do that. Doesn't that seem easier than giving birth, Giving
birth or going through the adoption process?
Now, I will say, if you are like, hey, I do think a lot of, you mentioned like freezing eggs, and there's a lot of that sort of talk. And I'm like, do that for sure. That is also very expensive.
Massively expensive.
And like, there are a lot of kids in need. So I do hope over the next, in the coming years, as probably birth rates lower, and like there are more kids, and there are kids in the system that still need help and still would love to go to a family, like that people would really consider that as an option.
Totally.
But who knows what'll
No,
happen.
I always think about that when my mom really wants me to freeze my eggs, and I'm like, I don't think that my genes are like the best. Like, I'm not dying to spend like a down payment on a house on my maybe babies that are gonna be depressed. I know they are,
You
like
just feel it in your bones.
they're not gonna like it here. I'd feel bad. So like, why not just have somebody who's already here? And I think that's what brought me to like anti-adoption TikTok was I was looking in, I get curious about adoptees and like if they're having a good time. And yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff about the fact that it's just regulated in the wrong ways.
Mm-hmm. It's it's like a free for all. It feels like, I think.
Yeah.
And now there's a lot of money tied up into it for both ends. Like people are making a lot of money being part of this. And it's just kind of, it just feels weird that we care so much about so many things in America. And then there's a lot of people like politically whose platform is like the children. What about the children? Don't we care about the children?
Yeah.
What's this thing going to do to the children? And then there's like a bunch of kids in foster care, and then who are just waiting to be like, hey, I'm also a child. Do you care or like
remember
what
me?
is this?
Yeah.
And I'm a big, I don't know how you feel, Remy, but like I am married and we do talk about having kids and stuff. And a huge hurdle for me is like, okay, so I bring a kid into the world now. Like, what's the world going to be in 20 years?
I know.
30 years. Like, it's scary to think about. Like, if I bring a child in this world, are they going to be like fighting for water in a little bit? Truly a thing I think about a lot. I'm really good at being romantic.
Constantly. No. Like, I think about it all the time, and I think about it like on the flip side. There must have been so many other times in history that people were like, now, and so I don't think like it does suck, but we have made a lot of progress. But like we are in a moment of regression right now, which really, really sucks. But then I think about, okay, the people who aren't afraid of the world right now, they're the ones having the kids.
Yeah.
And not to use a buzzword, but indoctrinating the kids into their belief system. So I'm like, so I'm just like, I don't know. But then I also don't want to have a kid just to be like, be a liberal crusader. That's crazy.
Sure. I think if you want to survive the coming water wars, the best thing you can do is adopt a bunch of children right now and prepare them for like 2045.
What?
That's what you do. Oh, sorry.
Build a little Last of Us team.
I'm just saying, like, it's a lot of people are like, oh, how am I going to build an army to survive the apocalypse?
Just adopt all the kids that,
Yeah. That's what the X-Men is all about. It's just an old guy adopting kids.
It's a nice orphanage for kids that were either turned away from their families or don't know their families or their families don't understand their specific gifts.
Yeah. And then they also fight literal race wars. So you know how it is. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into raising a child and deciding to have a child. And I just hope that more people are also like, there is like, maybe slightly less talked about option that we could go about that might be beneficial for the child and for us. That's all I'm saying.
But yeah, speaking of kids, because a lot of people, anti-abortion activists will be like, give us your baby. Like, if you don't want to have a baby, instead of having an abortion, give us your baby. And most of the time, like, they don't want your baby. They're not actually willing to take your baby. And you probably wouldn't want to pass your baby on to that type of person.
Right.
But also, apparently there are like no unwanted babies like in the adoption system. Like there's no babies up for adoption. Like the line for babies is millions of people long.
Yeah.
Whereas there's tons of kids.
Yeah. It's like a lot of like once you start hitting that tween age, so like I guess probably like 12, 10, 11, 12 up, whatever. Yeah, people are just like, oh no, it's kind of like, it's honestly, it kind of feels like the reverse of how people rescue pets, which is wild. I feel like people are okay with rescuing, like, oh, she's been to like 3 different homes and like she's a biter, but we love her, like that's totally fine. But when it's a kid, they just assume automatically. They're like, oh, 13? We're hoping to go a little younger.
A problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I get it. Human beings generally around that age are tough. We're annoying. We're growing.
Horrible
we're
people.
Changing.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. But like, yeah, it's such a bummer to be like, oh, truly a young kid that I can form and like kind of, I do think there's a little bit of like, and pretend that they've always been here with us and that it's one of ours, quote unquote, whatever, is so much easier and so much better than like someone that like I have to work a little harder for. But I'm like,
that's the thing, is you have to be willing to do the work.
That's exactly right. If you're not willing to work as a parent, then I don't think you should be able to have a kid at all. You know
at
what
all.
I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's insane that's even like a hurdle, but people are how they are. So here we are. I was lucky, I guess. I don't really think about that much, but if I would have stayed in the system a lot longer, who knows what could have happened. There are other comedians who did like bounce around, like Monroe Martin and I think Chanel.
Yeah,
like their stories are definitely different than mine, but like they're also proof that like like these kids can grow up to be awesome people, and like
amazing people,
you got
talented, brilliant people. Literally, you would be so lucky to raise the two of them.
And you can be part of that. Like you can be part of molding this person. Like someone's brain isn't fully formed until they're 25. You know what I mean? Which allegedly, because I was still a moron at 25. So maybe I'm a moron forever. I don't know. But like there's a lot of time where you can do the work and be a beneficial person in someone's life. And it, I think with a lot of things in the world, it's just like re-envisioning how we see it. I understand there's a lot of traditional norms. There's a lot of, nuclear family kind of talk or whatever, or like traditional family talk of like, this is what a family is supposed to be. But it's like, you decide what your family is going to be. Like, why?
In so many different capacities these days, too.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of people have chosen families just because their families reject them for certain things. Like, there is no guarantee of having a perfect nuclear family. And if that's what you expect, again, don't have kids.
Yeah. Do you have a drive to like, be like, I want to have a child? Like
to parent? Yeah. I like, since I was really little, like my mom used to keep baby books of us. And in my like 1.5-year book or something, she was like, Remy just like loves babies and like cute stuff. And like, she just treats everyone like they're her baby and like.
Still does.
Yeah. But at the same time, I still don't feel equipped. And I have the things of, is it fair to bring someone here?
Yeah.
And I can't think of a reason that's not entirely selfish to like just make a baby from scratch.
Yeah.
But then I do think a lot of adoptive, I don't want to say a lot of, I do think there are some adoptive parents who like give themselves a pat on the back for being like, I saved you.
Of course.
And like, that's not a thing you can hold over children either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, saying it to a kid is fucked up. I do think there's a lot of people who are like, we did our best and here's our little, like they do pat themselves on the back to other people. It is crazy if you're like, I took you out of the mud. You better respect me. Like, that's a wild thing, I think. And I was lucky, like, whatever our differences are, like neither one of my parents ever did that to me.
Yeah.
I think that was like some of the guilt that I had sometimes, being like, yo, I think this person is acting in a shitty way or treating me in a way that I don't like, but like they did technically save me, like they did. Like that is like a hard thing to rationalize. And
for sure.
Even in my hometown, like it was like the early pandemic and George Floyd really like there's stuff I knew about where I grew up, but I don't think I really like viscerally understood it until that moment. Like I really felt, I saw some of the things people were saying, whether it was about the pandemic, whether it was about race, whether it was about this country, whether it was whatever. And I was like, you babysat me, you know, like, did you think these things about me? And then I was like, oh shit, was I like one of the good ones to you? And that's a whole another mind fuck, right? And it's weird the warped ways that people can be messed up and do messed up things and still like take a kid in, or like whether it was my family or like extended family, friends of family, whatever, like they took care of me, but like they never really knew me. And that like really, because I didn't know myself, like, and now I know myself. I'm like, oh, if I had a choice, if I was this demeanor when I was a kid, I would have kept like my mom, I would have kept my brother and sisters, but like we would have moved. I would be like, Linda, we're moving.
Let's get out of here.
We can't be around these people anymore.
Yeah.
So I just, whatever your choice is, I really just think that like that, just look at it holistically, like really think about what you're doing, because that'll make you a better parent from day one than most parents out there who are just kind of like, I have the human urge to have a child. And that's not wrong. That is basically why we're on this planet, is because it's ingrained in us to, you know, procreate, whatever, and just exist. We're all animals at the base of it. This is what I would tell my kid before bed every night. We're all animals. Good luck. You'll figure it out.
And everybody poops.
And everybody poops. But like, I think, like truly, I know it's cliche, but if you're adopting, be around this child, and it's cliche because it's true. It truly does take a village. Like every kid or every person I know who has a kid or multiple, like they're not doing it by themselves. You know, it's like parents are watching a kid. The community is helping out with after school stuff or something. Like they stay at grandma's, they stay at whatever, you know. So I think there are a lot of people who are doing their best, and that's great. But I would challenge anyone who's going to adopt to like think about how you could change your best and so you could make that kid's life a little easier in the long run. Like I think my parents, they loved me, but they were short-sighted. You know what I mean? Like they didn't really think about what is this action now gonna what's that gonna do in like 25 years, you know? So.
Yeah. I just want to go back to foster care for a second, because I have one friend who was in that system until he was like 11, and then he got adopted then. And he said that the foster homes were like terrible. And I think like that comes from an imbalance in the rules again too, because again, they're paying these people to foster children instead of giving that money to, like, of course, not all parents want to hold on to their children. They can't do it mentally. They're not ready, whatever, like they want to give them up. But then some people like really don't.
Right.
And like they're in dire situations where like I've seen some TikTok about like adoption agencies pressuring people to give up their kids and being like, oh, well, we'll give you this money. And they're like, okay. And it's a business. Like foster care, I feel, and adoption is a business.
Yeah, because it's not, you know, there's a lot of, as with everything, a lot of privatization where it's just like, that's such a super villain thing to be like, knock on someone's door and be like, hey, I heard you had a kid. That,
give me the child.
Like just holding a giant check and being like, $50,000 is wild. And the system is broken. So many systems that are put into place to benefit children are broken and are, like I said before, lower on the totem pole. I don't know how to fix that. Like, I agree. Like, I've heard that before. I've heard that a lot of foster care stuff is just a nightmare. Like other people talk about, I don't think everybody who does foster care is bad. Absolutely not. But like,
no, of course not.
I
have a friend also who fostered teenagers and she's great.
Exactly. So like, I think part of it is just being like, someone's got to care. And it's not going to be me. I don't care about anything. But no. But like enough people just need to really dig in. And you know what's wild is like the kids definitely care. Like they grow up to care. They are like the people making these TikToks are like who are like, yo, no one should adopt, no one should do this. They're saying that because they do care.
Yeah.
They were traumatized.
They care about other people that they don't want this to happen to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of getting those people in positions of power or, influence, or where people will actually listen to change it. But like, that's such an annoying answer because like, I don't have like a good answer for that other than just being like, yeah, it is fucked up. Like that's such a bummer.
No, I think it's like just a thing that we have to like keep bringing up because people keep saying, we care about the kids. This is all for the kids, whether they're protesting drag night or saying that, abortion should be illegal, like all of these things that they're saying that they're protecting kids. But like, then where's the gun reform? Because those are kind of like, that's another thing. I'm like, my biological clock says have a kid, but then the news says it's going to get killed at school. Right. All of these people are saying that they care about kids. Everyone's saying, oh, people are pedophiles, people are groomers. We have like Epstein's list. No one cares. Like, where is everyone who supposedly cares about these kids? How come we don't care about the system that gets those kids onto a good path?
If a politician is saying it, I generally am like, most of you are lying.
I'm just saying like the people.
But
like,
the people in general, I think people really, they're kind of selfish. I'm going to be honest. Like, they, especially if you're trying to get like some sort of reform or change or action, you're just throwing something out there because the people who are like, oh, we have to protect the children are also the people who I'm like, well, I just saw you spank your kid in public. So like, you don't care. You don't care the way you like. You have to protect these kids in these ways. Like it's very specific, right? So it's coming back to that thing of just like I don't know how to get those. I know they're wrong. Like I know that's hypocritical, but I don't know how to like.
I don't know how to rectify it really.
That's a forever thing, right? That's a thing.
I just think it has to be more in the conversation.
Yeah.
Like for whenever somebody's talking about caring about kids, it's like, okay, so what do you think about like adoption policies and like foster care and like what's going on in those systems? Like, do you do anything to help there? Or
you mentioned this before, actually. Instead of abort, we'll adopt your kid.
Yeah.
Like even that sentiment is just like we're not just like a second option for you. You know, it's not like it. The thing I always think about is like, it's like Valentine's Day is for your wife, and then you have February 15th, and that's for your mistress. You know, like we're not your mistress. You know, we don't just. It's not just like a thing. You don't just get to have us whenever you want. Like it's an intentional decision, and not
everybody who wants a kid deserves a kid.
I mean, that's true. There should be a test. I do think.
I don't know if that's even something I can say, but
I just think, you mean. You got to take a test to get a driver's license. You want to be a notary. You know, you got to take a test. You got to take some tests to have a kid. I think that's fun.
I think so.
And the test is, does Ben like you? That's the test.
Yeah.
And I like most people. So.
And would Remy hang out with you for more than an hour?
Right.
So do you remember any of your early conversations? Like, did you come to your parents to be like, hey, like, so I'm adopted. What's the deal? Or like, did they sit you down?
I think my earliest discussions with my parents just about adoption was just like, I think my mom was just being like, would you ever want to meet your birth mother? You know, you
that's the first conversation.
Like, you haven't. Yeah. I mean, pretty.
That's like so heavy.
I don't think that's, I actually don't think that's that crazy. Cause like, I just think there's so many contextual clues to being like, I never really had questions about, you know, why I was adopted, because it's like I can't change that. Like,
but did they tell you about like your meeting day or like?
No, I don't. Well, if they did, I honestly didn't remember it until when I got married. My sister, my older sister, she spoke at like the groom's dinner, and she was like, I remember when they brought you home from the plane, and I was like, I've got a brother. And I was like, I don't remember any of this. I don't remember you. You've never said this to me. I was like, got me off the plane. I thought they drove. I don't know. I didn't know my parents flew. So
You're like, I've
I
taken
think,
a flight so early.
right. Right. And I think a lot of that, there's a lot of stuff we just never talked about because again, the Midwestern stuff, like it's weird. It's we in my family, like, you know, German background, the adopted family, German background. So like Midwestern German background had a lot of their own generational trauma that they also had to deal with and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff just like tightly wrapped inside of them that they just didn't let out. So, you know, there wasn't a lot of like, it was like, we love you. It's like, you know, ever since we got you home, we knew you were special, but it was never like, yeah, we tried, you know, here's why this happened. It was until I was much older that I figured out why. I mean, I knew why I was adopted. My mom had stomach cancer. So she had these tumors and then was like cancerous. And they're like, you're not going to be able to have kids. Right. And they're like, okay, so we'll adopt. Later, I think I was, man, I'm going to say like 25, 26. I did find out, and this is like hilarious to me, so don't get sad. But I was not my parents' first choice for adoption. That is a real thing. I found out when I was going through like all these records and stuff, they straight up were like ready to get 3 Korean kids. And then the deal just fell apart.
You have to find those kids.
I think about them every day.
Be like, how'd you turn out?
My sworn enemies. Which is like hilarious to think about how different their life would be and like, who knows what my life would be. I'd probably be funnier, but you know, here we are.
One of my favorite adoption stories is this documentary called Twinsters, and it's twin sisters that got adopted, one in America and one in Paris. And they like found each other and they just started like talking. And I know that this is your rival and not your twin, but it was just really interesting to see this identical person and what different environments and different families did for them.
It's like a natural science experiment. It's wild that that's a thing that can. Also, it's crazy to separate twins. That's insane. I don't think that should be allowed. Yeah. That makes no sense. No. But
unless you give both of them half of a medallion, and then it's like, they have to find each other.
Your sister is out there. You must search for her. It's like they turn into like a Power Ranger. That'd be great.
Yeah.
What's tough for me and why I'm actually grateful to be on this podcast is because we never really talked about a lot of stuff and like I had good friends when I was growing up who were just like, and I was around them for so long. We literally grew up together. Like some of my best friends today, people who were in my wedding, people who I text every week are like people I've known since I was a child, right? So there's not a lot of questions they ask. And like, I am always curious about like, what do people think about an adoptee? You know, like what do people think about my situation? Because like, I'll say a joke or I'll gloss over something in my life and people will be like, that's insane. And I'll be like, what? That was just like my 12th birthday, you know? And so I never really know what's interesting because when I was younger, I was just like, well, we're not going to dwell on it. Like, I don't think adoption was like a huge hurdle for me, but I think being like one of the few Black people where I grew up was like, it took me a while to like overcome that. Totally. That became like a bigger obstacle than adoption ever did.
Nope, that makes a lot of sense. But whenever I think about you or what I think about adopted people is like, I'm always shocked when people are like, oh, adoption's no good. Because I'm like, but Ben's great.
That's because I've done the work.
You have.
No, I appreciate that. That's very nice. I think I am going to say this maybe, and this isn't Remy's opinion. This isn't Robin's opinion. This isn't anybody else's opinion. This is my personal opinion. I do think adoption TikTok is wild and very toxic. It is one of the craziest places I've ever been. I had to back out of it pretty quickly once I don't know if we ever talked about this, but
we did. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that I had mentioned like, white couples like running into the room being like, we got a baby. And then like flipping a little black baby over. And I was like, I can't be part of this. I definitely want people to see my jokes and I want people to see my opinions and stuff. But like, I have to find a way to ease into adoption stuff because adoption TikTok truly was one of the bleakest places I've ever been on TikTok. And my introduction just so people know, my introduction to TikTok was like 75-year-old men talking about eating pussy. So
sounds like TikTok.
Sounds like TikTok. Well, so you mentioned that your parents didn't really talk about a lot with you. Did they talk about sex?
No, they just really, I was so much on my own. It's so funny the things we never talk about. But also like the hardcore shit we ended up getting into. For sure. I was on my own sex wise. I do. I remember being like, maybe like 12, 13, whatever. And like, we go to church. This is fucked up. I don't think I've ever said this. So
my favorite
exclusive.
Sentence. Yeah.
Put this exclusive up. But like, getting into like porn and stuff younger and just being like, okay, we have to go to church. But I am going to I would download porn and then go to church.
On the way to church.
But on like the, like on the family computer.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it's going to be like an hour and a half, whatever. By the time I get back, it'll be ready to go. And we can use this later tonight. So like, there was never like a sex act, but occasionally I do think I'd like run into stuff that like my dad had looked at or something and be like, well, I guess he's doing this too,
Yeah.
And like most people, I feel like I've at least had inklings that my parents boned while I was in the house one time. You know what I mean? I was like, I think that was sex looking back at it now. So that's pretty much it.
And when figuring it out for yourself, do you remember your first time coming? Was it intentional?
It was not intentional. I saw a clown and something happened. No, I actually don't. I don't remember the first time I came. I think I was younger than I would think in my actual mind. Like I would, if someone asked me, I'd be like, yeah, I think it was like 13, but I think I was probably like 11 or 12. I don't really remember how it happened, what I was doing. The thing I have the most vivid memory of is there was this picture of this lady, just like kind of Pamela Anderson looking, like huge fake boobs, like done up teased blonde hair. And I just remember that picture being like a seminal part of my masturbation routine. Like just being like, and like trying to print it out and like hiding it. Yeah, I think I was in like 6th grade because I was printing pictures out and like hiding them
during
in like
church.
Random books in my room. And sometimes I didn't always, like you'd run out of ink. So you just have like the top of a lady and you'd be like, this is going to have to do.
This is what we're going to do. Yeah.
Until we go to Best Buy, until I convince my parents we need to go to Best Buy for batteries, like, I'm going to go steal some printer ink and then we'll figure this out.
So funny. No, I'm not going to ask about the method because we don't really remember it.
I just think I was just like flicking my little boy bean. You know what I mean? Just really throwing it around and seeing what would happen. I'm sure nothing happened the first time I came. I truly don't know how I got. Yeah. I've never said that before, and I don't know that I'll ever say it again. So
I'm making merch. Flick your boy bean.
Again.
That's yours if you want it. I'm totally fine with that. I don't know. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. If you ever remember it, maybe
you're the first person I'll talk to. I'll be like, please. Remy.
Yeah.
I remember my first nut.
Yeah. Okay, so Robin did a little research for us about the adoption process in the U.S. And I just wanted to read some of that so that her work is not for naught. And so that people have a little better understanding. So it depends on the type of adoption being pursued, but here is a general overview. You choose an adoption type. The first step is deciding whether you want to have a domestic infant adoption, foster care adoption, and international adoption, which we spoke about. Once you have decided on an adoption type, you can begin researching adoption agencies or attorneys who can help you guide through the process. So, like, there's lawyers involved. Sounds expensive. It's important to choose a reputable and licensed agency. Yeah. I don't know how we would find that, but maybe we can get a list. I don't know if that's our job actually today. Never mind.
Like, well, not today, but like that's that's what's funny is like that's what people have to go through. Like,
yeah,
looking back up, you're like, oh, there's unlicensed adopt. Like, I could just step into the wrong thing. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be that hard.
I know this is from TikTok, but there are ones being like, there are agencies that are in cahoots with like sex traffickers or traffickers in general. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they say that about everything, though. You know, like, oh, where did you get that? And they're not wrong.
And they're not wrong.
But it is like a weird thing now that everyone's realizing that everything ties back to sex trafficking and like slavery.
And again, no one seems to care. But okay, then you complete a home study that involves a comprehensive assessment of the prospective adoptive parent's suitability to adopt. This may include background checks, interviews, and home visits, but not like psych test. Like, are you nice?
Are you chill or
what? Are you chill? Can you hang out with Remy for an hour? Does Ben like you? Find a match. Once you've completed home study, the agency or attorney will begin searching for a match between the prospective adopted parents and child who is available for adoption. This may involve reviewing profiles of waiting children or being matched with a birth mother. I wonder if there's an app for that.
Whoa. That's a really good idea. That's like dystopian and fucked up, but that's a good idea.
Thank you. There will be a Black Mirror episode about it. Placement. Once a match has been made, the child will be placed with the prospective adoptive parents. This may include a period of adjustment and transition, particularly for older children or children from foster care. But like anyone, like literally I saw a TikTok about this girl was saying she's no fun at parties because anytime someone says they're adopting an infant, she's like, oh, that must be really hard on the infant and the mother. Like,
yeah, I mean, that person is annoying. That's just like a crazy, like, why? she's right to say that she's annoying. I mean, but yeah.
But it also could be traumatic.
Oh, it's for sure traumatic.
Yeah.
Like, think about moving homes as a child.
Yeah.
Or having to make new friends. But I don't think there's this unfortunateness, but also kind of beautiful symmetry in life where it's like, trauma is kind of part of it. I do this too much. I'm not going to get too much into it, but like, obviously suffering is part of life and like, we can't have the good without understanding.
So Jewish of you. So,
hey, most people when I moved to New York thought I was Jewish.
I did.
I know. And that's why we bonded.
Yeah.
I lied about my heritage so we could be friends. I think there's a point, there's something I want to say that I don't think that was in what you were saying. So we talk a lot about, and I do think this is very important to talk about how traumatic this can be for a child, how traumatic this can be for the mother or the family giving up a kid. What is also really tough is, so if you're trying to adopt, they make it very, very hard for you.
Yeah.
Especially international adoption is a lot easier, I think, than domestic adoption. This is from people I've talked to, because occasionally people, in my circle who have met will like reach out and be like, hey, we're going through this process. We know you're adopted. Do you have any advice? And I'm like, don't hit your kid if you get one. That's like my big advice.
Yeah.
But I've talked to people, so like they've reached out to me like, yes, this is happening in July, it's gonna go through, whatever. And then like, July comes around and I see them post on social media and be like, unfortunately, the birth parent of the person we were going to adopt decided they wanted their kid. Like, it's tough on the people who actually do want to use the system for what it's for and like use these resources and, change the life of a child.
Yeah.
And that's another unfortunate aspect of like this dysfunctional system of like, this is the case, right? I know someone who his wife couldn't have kids, so they worked very hard to adopt a child. They had been set up. It was going to happen. And then at the last minute, they were just like, no, the birth mother doesn't want to do this anymore. And that's like, how is that even possible? Like, they've already gone through the home assessments, all this stuff, you know, like and this is a fucked up question I didn't ask because I don't know how to ask someone, but it's like, okay, so I'm assuming you spent money.
That's what I was just going to ask.
Doesn't it get money back?
Or not do you get money back, but like, does that assessment still count? Because they assessed you.
That's a good point for the fit with that child.
The fit. Oh.
Hopefully. Hopefully it's not just like you're
you alone.
Yeah. I would hope there's like two assessments, right? One, do you fit the general criteria of like you can be in the pool of families looking to adopt? Two, I can almost guarantee this isn't real. I'm going to ask after this podcast. Two, do you fit specifically the needs of this child? And I bet that one's not really one that exists.
Yeah. This one seems that the home study is before the match.
Yeah.
So hopefully it could count, but it's still upsetting if you've gotten excited about your new life with this little person.
Right. I'm not trying to make light of this, but in a way, it's a different version of losing a child. You literally have built this life for this person that you were making space for in your life. There are physical manifestations of things you were going to do. Mentally, you were prepared. And then just like that, it's not happening. And that's traumatic too. That's not going to make people want to like the fortitude you have to jump back into the system after that, knowing that could happen. Like that's hard too.
It's really hard. Yeah. And people have always said that, I mean, from what I've heard in media or other people, it's like, yeah, the adoption process has taken a really long time. We've been waiting for a really long time. Like things have fallen through. But like, just like you said, that happens with conceiving children too. And it doesn't make the loss more or less significant.
Yeah, it's definitely like, and I don't want anyone to like watch this and be like, this guy says, I'm just saying it's a different version of that, you know,
totally.
like it's,
I
think I'm not a parent. I know I'm not a parent, but I think like the way your brain chemistry literally changes upon definitely when you have kids, but when you like really get into parenting mode, to have that like abruptly shift or taken away from you or whatever, I don't know how you bounce back from stuff like that.
Support from the other people who have gone through it.
Yeah. Hopefully. And then, you know, also watch my comedy. I think it will help you.
Watch Ben's comedy. Yeah. Okay. So after finding a match, then there's placement. This may involve a period of adjustment or transition, and then finalization. The final step in adoption process is finalization, which legally establishes the adoptive parents as the child's legal parents. Yeah. Some people have been saying that you can foster for a long time and not adopt because they think that the adoption itself is like traumatic. I don't know. I think we have to have more people on with different perspectives because like adopted kids and adoptive parents are not a monolith. And there can be really great adoption and there can also be like a really flawed system and they can exist at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. Like I've met some amazing people who have been adopted and had like great experience. I've met amazing people who had tough experiences. It's like anything. There's so much that goes into it. But I think so. That's why it's I appreciate like you taking the time to talk about it, or like anyone who, no matter how I feel about adoption TikTok, I do appreciate the people who are like, hey, this is my experience. Here's the thing that I went through. And you know, it's heartbreaking to hear some of the bad ones, but the thing, I don't know, like I look at myself personally and I'm like, the things that were rough about my life, I'm like, so little of it to me, so little of it had to do with adoption specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess at the same time, I'm like, well, I wouldn't have been where I was without adoption. So I guess it's part of it. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just want to apologize for being like, that's heavy about them asking about your birth mom.
No, I don't give a shit.
Well,
I'm
just
fine.
because the first time I saw that conversation was on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Strangely enough, that's where we were having it. You saw our episode. That's great.
And Lisa Vanderpump, who I like her otherwise. She's a Virgo queen, and she's started Vanderpump Rules, one of my favorite shows.
Sure.
Her son is adopted, and there was like a storyline for an episode or two where he was thinking about contacting his adoptive parents, and she was just like, his mom was just so beside herself and was like so nervous about it happening and stuff. And that always like at the time, I think I was like, oh, that makes sense, because like you don't want to be like abandoned by your kid. Like that's what's going to happen. But also like now I'm looking back on it, I'm like, that's so selfish. Like it's his thing to do. He didn't end up seeking them out. And like, I don't know if that was even his decision or if he just didn't want to upset his mom.
Yeah. I think my mom, I don't know. I think my mom would be, I bet if I really, now she'd be fine. But like around like 18, 19, if I was like, oh, finally I'm old enough to do whatever, I think whether she would admit or not, she'd be a little bit like, oh, you're just trying to, find someone better than me, whatever. But that's like her weird Midwestern mom stuff.
Yeah.
Her bigger fear was like, she was always worried I was going to convert to Islam. That was like the big thing. She's always like, I have it. It's so much work. I love it. I love a lot of the stuff like my friends have taught me about it, but like any religion, it's imperfect. But there were when I was younger, I was like, oh, there's some like really interesting things here. And I did like the discipline aspect, but I was not a disciplined person. And I still am not. And I did not. So I went the complete opposite way. I was like, yeah, I guess I'm agnostic at best. So you should have let me go the other way. But yeah, she never, I think maybe, and I have to put this caveat here. Like my mom did struggle with some mental illness, mental health issues is probably more like accurate to say. But so like sometimes she would say stuff, but I'm like, I don't know that you really truly mean this, or like you're maybe just a little unwell.
Yeah.
So like, I think maybe if we were fighting or something, occasionally, like maybe once or twice, it would be a thing that would come up. You'd be like, you just want to get out of here and like, whatever. But like, never once was she like, what? Well, if you don't like it here, go find your birth mother. Like she never did that. So, but I think it would be pretty normal as a parent to be like, yeah, I want my kid to like know who they are and know their history if that's what they want, if that's what they want.
Yeah.
And that's a little scary, but it's just honestly now I'm just like, think of all the different types of families, I know, we know. And like, I don't know. There's like, it's actually kind of fascinating what family can be, So I would hope if I called her up and was like, hey, I've been thinking about this, that she would be on board and maybe,
like you were saying, it takes a village, and it's like, I'm just inviting another villager, and like maybe she would like to thank her and be like, thanks for this awesome little son.
Yeah, right. For me, there's also this thing of like, you could go through with that. You could find people and they could be like, yeah, I'm good. Like I've heard of that too.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that was like a big deterrent for me most of the time, where it was just like, what if I do all this stuff and then, you
get rejected
again?
Yeah.
Like that's pretty fucking tough.
Yeah. Yeah, that would suck. I can't imagine anyone rejecting you. And if they did, they're wrong.
You hear that? All of my exes.
I did see one story about a woman who was adopted and then her parents gave her up again. And then she was adopted again, but she loves her second family. So
that's crazy.
There's a lot of different ways that people end up with their parents, and some are good and some are bad. And I just want to talk about them more.
What's sad to me as a comedian? I genuinely was jealous of that lady's experience. I was like, damn, a second adoption, I could get a Netflix special off of
that. Ben, it has been so fun having you on this podcast. Thank you for sharing everything you did with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, can you share with our audience where they can find you, your comedy, your new book?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at Shaq Katzner on everything. Shaq, like the basketball player, Katzner, Katzner. And I do have a graphic novel. It's back here. It's called Hello, My Name is Poop. That I wrote during the pandemic, and I'm very excited about. It's for like middle grade readers. So like, I don't know, like 11 to like 14 or something. But
nice.
It's got fun jokes for the parents. It's got awesome illustrations, truly for everyone. If you're into any of that, I promise you it's very good. And I do have, hopefully, unless I got fired, who knows, but I do have other stuff coming out, like other projects coming out, and hopefully we'll be able to announce some stuff soon.
Exciting.
So follow me so we can talk about that.
Yeah, Rob, can you just read the synopsis of the book? Just because we talked about it before, and it's going to be, we didn't get any Robin voice on this episode, and people are probably craving.
We like Robin voice.
All right, I'll do the blurb. Okay, Poop is a normal kid with normal problems. Parents, homework, bullies. He used to have a normal name too, but then he moved to a new school and everything went down the toilet. That's the bad news. The good news, turns out some names are special. Some names come with powers. Turns out those bullies really stepped in it. Sometimes being a kid can really stink. Will Poop becomes the new target of bullies at his middle school. All day long, they call him Poop. However, when Icky the janitor reveals himself to be a wizard in disguise, Will learns that there are names of power. If you are given one of those names, you gain certain abilities. Poop is one of those names.
Hell yeah, it is.
He now has powers that he could use to get back at the bullies. But power, even Poop power, is exactly what can turn someone into a bully. With some help from his friends, Will must find a way to use his fantastic farting magic for good.
Yay!
That's the blurb.
It's like, it reminds me of like Captain Underpants, but not.
I read that when I was younger. I actually have a copy of it behind me. But there's a lot. It's influenced by that. You know what I mean? Like,
I love it.
I love books like that. So absolutely.
Well, Ben, I have to ask you this question after a sexual experience, which there was some sexual stuff in this episode.
Wait, did we have a sexual experience?
We had one just now on How Come. I have to ask you, did you finish?
I've never finished harder in my entire life. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. And we'll see you next time on How Come. Goodbye.
Bye.
It's not you, it's me. I try so hard to finish honestly. They say you'll know when you go all the way from A right down to O. Oh no, I think that I still got a ways to go. Oh, I'm sick of this and I have got to know. How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna just